Welcome back. With me now, I have Anna Ljung, the CEO of Moberg Pharma. A warm welcome, Anna.
Thank you,
Please.
David. Hi, everyone. So I'm Anna Ljung. I'm the CEO of Moberg Pharma. And let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing right now. We have our lead product, MOB-15, where we have completed 2 large phase 3 studies showing world-leading ability to kill nail fungus. So we achieved in these more than 800 patients, we achieved 76% mycological cure rate, which is unheard of for a topical treatment. Normally you have between 30 and 50% treatment in that category. So now we're heading towards registration in Europe. So we're currently working intensely with our EU submission that will be filed during this year. And in parallel, we're also preparing for 1 additional phase 3 study that is needed for approval in the US as well. And our goal with this product is really to become the market leader globally. So we see that this product has a global product potential of $250 to $500 million. And we're not doing this all by ourselves. We do have some good partners in place. So we have Bayer for Europe. We have Taisho for Japan. We have Dongku, which is the market leader within dermatology in Korea, and also Cypher for Canada. And in total, these partnerships enable us potential milestones of $120 million in addition to product sales. And as we're now registering in EU, we expect to get approval and also be able to launch during 2023. So that's really the key event that is ahead of us. And it's actually not the first time we're launching an onychomycosis product. We actually took our first generation product, Kerasal Nail, to market and built a 440 million franchise around that product with 30% market share in the US and sales in more than 30,000 places and also within 30 countries around the world. Now we want to do exactly the same journey once more, but with MOB-15 that we see have an even greater potential. And onychomycosis, is that such a big problem? Well, for most patients, it's more of a cosmetic problem than a very severe disease. But nevertheless, 10% of the global population has onychomycosis, and there aren't really that much good treatment alternatives out there. So if you look at US, for example, you have 30 million Americans with onychomycosis, but if you look at the number of scripts, you see that you only have 5 million scripts a year. That really tells you that there is a big unmet medical need. And we also see when we talk to doctors that a lot of doctors actually avoid prescribing gold standard, which is terbinafine tablets, due to the side effect profile of oral terbinafine, where you have the risk of severe side effects such as drug-drug interactions and also liver damage. So we're using terbinafine, the gold standard in oral treatment, but instead we're applying it locally on the nail. So we don't take the D route through the body, so our systemic levels are 1,000 times lower, but the levels of terbinafine in the nail and under the nail are 40 times higher compared to oral treatment. So we know that the active molecule works, and we know that we get it to the right place. And moving on to our clinical data, as I started out with, we achieved 76% mycological cure in our 2 large phase 3 studies. And mycological cure, that's actually when you have no living or actually no dead fungus left. So these samples are without any fungi in them. And it's common knowledge that once you have killed the fungi, then healthy nail will regrow. It may take some time, but there is a clear correlation. If you look at all the competitors, the higher mycological cure rate you achieve, the more of the fungi you actually kill, the more likely you are to have a complete cure, that is also a fully regrown, normal-looking nail. Our data was a bit surprising because we got this very high mycological cure, but somehow it didn't translate into a high complete cure rate. So we engaged world-leading experts to figure out what had happened. And what we found out was that the vehicle we're using to transport terbinafine through the nail plate, it does so by hydrating the nail. And when you hydrate the nail, that's excellent for transporting terbinafine, but one temporary side effect is that this increased water level in the nail creates a whitening, a temporary whitening of the nail. It's the same phenomenon as when you take a long shower, then the skin on your fingertips becomes a bit whitish. This is exactly the same phenomenon, but on the nail instead. So we have treated for 48 weeks in this study, and by reducing treatment time, we see that we still get sufficient amounts of terbinafine in through the nail, but we have plenty of time for the water level in the nail to normalize and thus avoiding this whitishness. So basically when our clinicians in the study looked at the nails, they could say, well, this is not, you don't have an ugly yellowish nail, but this is not totally normal looking because you have this whitishness, discoloration. So that's another reason why we want to conduct one more study in the US. And basically it will be pretty much the same study as we already conducted, but with a shorter treatment duration. So the two studies that we have conducted, it's sufficient for registration in Europe, and we will now progress with the registration in Europe, and in parallel we will conduct one more study in the US. And the advantage of shortening treatment time is, of course, not only that we solve this whitening effect. From a patient's compliance perspective, it's a huge advantage of only having to treat for 8 to 10 weeks daily compared to our main competitors. All of them are once daily during a full year, and that's because it takes almost a year for a big toenail to regrow. So if we look at the competitive landscape, we're better at killing the fungi than any of the topical alternatives. We're on par with oral terbinafine, that is gold standard, but without the side effects that you risk with oral therapy. And we also have a great deal of key opinion leaders that are involved in this study, both the existing studies and the new study, and are supportive of our concept. And looking at market size, I started out by saying that it's roughly 250 to 500 million global potential annually. If we'll break that down, you will see that US is roughly half the total world market. And you have other RX markets, such as Japan and Canada, that's roughly 1/4. And then you have the OTC markets, where Europe is a large part of the totality, and that's also approximately 1/4 of the market. And that the different sizes here are really driven by the different pricing points and the different market structures. So for Europe, for example, it's actually the patients themselves that are paying for the product, and that puts a cap on the price level, versus in the US, we're on par with the pricing for the other branded RX products. So of course there will be different volumes accordingly in the different territories. And what happened a few weeks ago in September was that we got approval from EMA's pediatric committee on our pediatric plan. That was a major milestone for us, because that enables us to file for a full application in EU that will enable us to get data exclusivity for up to 10 years after market approval, in addition to the already existing patent protection. But that's an important additional IP protection that is added. And what we need to do to achieve this is that we will do a small study on children, so children aged 6 to 17 years, and in total 30 children. And that study will be started during the fall next year, but will not be finished until 2026. So it's really a way for us to be able to file a full application. And of course, we would love to include children as well, but this is a disease where the majority of the patients are elderly. So there is less need, I would say, in a children population than in an elderly population. We are then filing during 2021, and with an average processing time of 1.5 years. We expect to get approval rather early in 2023. And of course, we want to launch as soon as we have that approval. So we're now preparing for product launch during 2023. And in parallel, we're progressing this US development plan with one additional study that will basically replicate the already completed study in the US. And a few words about our partners. So we have 4 partners in place, and it's the same setup with every partner. We take responsibility for product development and registration, versus our partners take responsibility and investing, marketing and sales. And that's a good way for a rather small company like Moberg to be able to have a global footprint despite being small. So what we're targeting is to work with leading local brands, such as Canesten for Bayer. So that's a good example of where it's a really good fit, I think. And this is also the same model that we use to work with our first generation product, Kerasal Nail. And just as that first generation product, we're also planning to keep the rights for the US, or at least to keep parts of the rights for the US, as US represent the largest individual market, and we do have an existing network especially within podiatrists. So basically there are 3 different type of prescribers in the US. You have podiatrists, and they're more than 40% of the prescriptions, and then you have the dermatologists, that's also a large part, and then you have the GPs. So what we want to do is focus on the podiatrists, and that's really an area where you don't have that much competition, because none of the big pharma are really interested in the podiatrists. So we think that we can build a franchise around MOB-015, just the way that we did around Kerasal Nail, adding on additional products and really building on that star product that we are convinced that MOB-015 will be. And we, of course, have a lot of knowledge from the direct-to-consumer marketing, because that is really what drives sales in this category. Also within the RX field, that's true. Then, of course, you have to add other vendors as well. You have all the payer discussions and so on. But part of what we have done before with Kerasal Nail, we can reuse for MOB-015, and we're of course building know-how for those parts that are new for us. And our plan is not to cover all of US by ourselves. We're planning to co-promote together with an US derm company. And to summarize, going back to my first slide, so why is it interesting to look at MOB-015? I think it really comes down to our strong clinical data, that we have world-leading ability to kill nail fungus. We have a good set of partners, so we have a clear path how we will commercialize. We will now file in Europe before the end of the year, and that will provide the opportunity to launch in EU by 2023, so it's not that far away. And in parallel, to get an even greater potential, we want to make one additional de-risked phase 3 study in the US, basically doing exactly what we did in the last phase 3 study that showed superiority, but we need 2 studies that show superiority. So that's the plan going forward. And basically building on the know-how and that we built with Kerasal Nail, doing this process once more for MOB-15, which we think has an even greater potential. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Anna. It was very clear, I believe, your presentation, easy to understand. So just a few follow-up questions still to elaborate on some topics. It was very clear that your efficacy with MOB-15 was outstanding compared to other topical applications. What data substantiates or shows that this is so good, besides the percentage of the nail fungi you killed? Is there something else?
Well, there is of course not just one number. There are several numbers, but
exactly.
it's really a combination of the high mycological cure that we have shown that we have killed the fungi, which is of course the most important. It's also the levels of terbinafine that we have shown that we have 40 times higher levels of terbinafine under the nail compared to oral treatment. So oral treatment have been used for a decade now, and that's really gold standard. So everyone knows that the molecule works. And we have shown that we have gotten the molecule to the right place. So that really reduces risks. I think another advantage that I didn't bring up is really the totality of the vehicle, where we see that 75% of our patients report some sort of improvement already at first visit after 12 weeks. And that's also important from compliance matters, since you basically have to treat the nail for very long times. And that's really challenging for patients. You have this ugly nail and you have to remember to treat once daily for a full year. To having those early signs that actually my nail starts to look better. Something is happening with my nail. That's also important.
Very interesting. Thank you. And you have an impressive set of partnerships. How did you go about to sign these partners at this early stage?
I think they're all intrigued by our data. That's the quick answer. I mean, this is the next generation product. We have taken MOB-15, we have taken Kerasal Nail to market with a somewhat different set of partners. So we know exactly what we want to do. And then we have these strong data, and that's basically the basis for the commercial decision by our partners to enter this partnership.
And you showed us a slide of the market for Kerasal Nail. Is that comparable to MOB-15? Like, is it going to be the same or less or more, or what do you think?
No, I think MOB-15 has 10 times that potential, basically, just given the fact that we achieve these high mycological cure rates, because that's unheard of. So basically, one can ask oneself, there is really no medical reason why you shouldn't choose MOB-15 when you treat onychomycosis, just given the data. So why would you try with oral terbinafine and risk those side effects if there is a topical alternative that is equally good at actually killing the fungi?
Here is a question from the audience. How much money from the sale of Kerasal Nail is still in the company? That's perhaps a bit of an odd question, because you have raised money since, haven't you?
Yes, and the way we did it, we had these two assets in the company. We had the commercial portfolio, and of course Kerasal Nail was the main asset there. And then we have MOB-15, that is the next generation product. And what we did was we sold off the commercial operations, and that was approved by annual general meeting or an extra general meeting. And that money that the share owners got from that divestment, that was distributed to the share owners. So we had an extra distribution of 46.5 kronas for each share to our share owners. And the idea behind that was really that we had two groups of investors. We had those that thought that, the main asset in MOB15 is in Moberg is really MOB15. And why are you spending time on these other products that are just, you know, they're generating some revenues, but since MOB15 has such a higher potential, we really want you to focus on MOB15. And then you have the other type of investors that looked at the OTC business and said, well, this is really a profitable business where you can calculate on cash flows and so on. And then you have this development part that just cost us money, because then that was in phase 3, and phase 3 is rather expensive. So it was in a way to satisfy all of our shareholders as well.
Okay. And I think we'll have to end on that note. Thank you once again. A pleasure having you here, and good luck.
Thank you.